Brendan, good to see you, man. It's been longer than I thought it's been.
Chris, good to see you. Love what you're doing with the books and now the podcast and everything. So excited to chat today.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you doing this, and I've got your books right here. So I've
All
got the
right.
Fud Factor and Dare to Disrupt. So they're both on the Books4Guys website, by the way. And so, uh, man, I'm gonna lead off with the first question for you because I'm gonna just for those that don't know or familiar with you, I'm gonna read something off, and you can find this on your LinkedIn, by the way.
Uh-oh.
Um,
Uh-oh.
but this is going to lead to my first question. So, Brendan Keegan, 6 time CEO, 21 times board director, 2 times best-selling author, philanthropist, speaker, co-owner of Andretti Racing, United Auto Sports, a ton of LinkedIn subscribers. And my question to you is, how do you manage your time to do all of this?
Well, Chris, I got to tell you, I have just completed my fifth book, and it is on balancing and managing your time. So
Oh,
it's going
perfect
to be coming
question
out
then.
next July. So I'll actually answer that with a little like preamble of the book. In
Yeah.
the book, I talk about these 6 circles of connection, and self, faith, family, friends, community, and professional. And it's having relentless focus on those 6 circles and what's important.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is, balance isn't those 6 individually. Like early in my career, 21, 22, 23, I didn't put a lot of time into family. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I had parents and siblings, but you see them weekly, monthly. So I buried myself in profession. You then have kids, and you got to pull back that a little bit because you now got family. So I think I've been relentless on always remaining balanced, and I'm always focused on efficiency and productivity. And the last component that I'd answer that with is as an engineer by training,
Hmm.
although I have probably no engineering skills left in my head, I'm a systems builder. So I've always built systems to allow me to do things faster.
Okay.
So, now I've got a system when I wake up in the morning, so I have good energy during the day. If I go into a company like Dare to Disrupt, I've got a system of how I go in to transform the company so that I'm not wasting time, in 6 months. In 6 months, we've had impact as opposed to just trying to figure stuff out. So I'm a little bit of an efficiency, productivity hawk, but
Yeah.
also you got to guard your time.
Yeah.
If you want to make an impact, if you want to make the biggest impact you can make, I should say, then you've got to guard your time and you got to value it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've really maximized and mastered. I heard a new term the other day was work life integration because of how many people work from home now and kind of trying to find that balance. But it always just like I don't have kids. I've got a dog and I'm married, but I've heard about you talk about your family, and I'm always I'm a big sports fan too. So I see these college coaches and these business leaders as well, and I see everything they accomplish, and my days go by fast, and I'm like, how do they do all of this, and keep up with everything that's on their schedule while also being, there with family and parents and such. So it's just a really fascinating time. It's just a fascinating thing to me and how people balance that out. So it's
And,
cool you
well,
write a book about it.
and it's interesting, I think as we look at, I call it in my book seasons of life.
Hmm.
I think we have to adjust to those seasons. You're single, then you're married, then if
Hmm.
you have kids, then if you're an empty nester, like those are very different seasons.
That's true.
Um, if you take a promotion, which is going to be good for your family, but it might be more demanding on your professional circle. But hey, that might be like, hey, that's how we're going to be able to put the kids through college. That's how we're going to be able to do things that you want to do. It's and by the way, I haven't come out with the title for it yet. So like I've
Okay.
got but one of the titles that I like, and I'm not sure the book people like, is Conscious
Yeah.
Balance. Is being conscious about your balance. And we could take football coaches. I think a lot of football coaches would tell you they're not balanced,
Yeah. Yeah.
or they say when the season's over, they become ultra balanced towards family,
Yeah.
knowing that, come August 1st, August 15th, whenever,
It's gonna
they go out
swing.
of balance. And
Yeah.
and and I'll just tell you when I'm a Patriots fan. So we got Josh McDaniels back as our offensive
Yeah.
coordinator.
Drake
And
May looks good.
oh, he does. He does. And what I'll tell you though about Josh McDaniels' balance as an offensive coordinator versus a head coach, the dude's down like 30, 40 pounds and he looks the healthiest he's looked in 10 years.
Yeah.
So I do think him saying, now, maybe he didn't want to say this because he got fired from a few jobs, but
Yeah.
he probably has better balance as a coordinator than head
Yeah.
coach. And in my opinion, he looks healthier.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that too, because you see, and again, we all have different capacities for what we can manage and how we can manage it. And I've noticed that with some college head coaches who have gone from being head coaches to coordinators, kind of like him, in the landscape of NIL and transfer portal and all that. Again, I don't know how they balance it. Maybe they've decided they just would rather coach ball and not deal with all that, and they're being a lot more successful now that they've taken a little bit of a step back instead of managing all that they had to, and maybe that just comes with knowing your capacity as well, and realizing, hey, I can balance better if I just don't do this. But I'm sure that's a different conversation with all that. But no, well, I'm excited you're writing a book about that, because that's probably, well, that will be another one that I'll read, because again, it's something that obviously I'm showing a lot of interest in, and intrigued by. Um, but Brennan, tell me a little bit about your story. And again, I've got your books here, and one, I know what this one's based off of, but just kind of your background that's led to where you're at, and then why you decided to write these books, and put that out there.
Yeah, so I have a super clear, vision for myself. I've always been one to, I was the kind of the dorky person that, wrote their goals down between, on holiday break between
Yeah.
Christmas and New Year's, and what do I want to accomplish next year, and then take pictures. And my first one was pictures out of a magazine, so that's going to date myself, and put a vision board up on the wall.
Yeah.
Now you just do it digitally, and so I was the guy who did that stuff. Even when some of my friends would be, I had a few friends that called me Oprah. They'd come, they'd see in my bedroom, they'd be like, "Oh, Oprah was here," and I'm like, "Shut up, man! It works, right?" Um, so I was the guy that did that, and so I've been very clear with the vision I've had for my life, and it's very simply stated, to build 1 million fearless leaders. Like I've said, it's so cool if the day that I pass, and at my wake, and hopefully it's an Irish wake and they're having a good time and they're talking stories and not crying, somebody says, hey, over his lifetime he impacted 1 million people.
Yeah.
Like if I could lay to rest with that legacy, it'd be like winning the Super Bowl of
Yeah.
life. So, as I built my career, and, I became a CEO at a young age of 29, and,
Hmm.
and then did it for, 25 years and then retired. Earlier, I said, I'm never going to get to 1 million by people that I manage. I'm
Yeah.
just, the math isn't going to be there. So, I'm decent at math, not as good at engineering anymore. So I said, what can I do? And believe it or not, the first thing I did is I started a LinkedIn newsletter. I said,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to reach out and get to more people, and it rose to 150,000 people.
It's
And by the way,
incredible.
every day I'm still amazed that 150,000 people actually hit the subscribe button.
Yeah.
And then I just started writing articles in news publications, Rolling Stone or Fast Company or Harvard Business Review or Bloomberg, and then I would kind of go out speaking. And then another thing that I did was, I was very fortunate to have 6 mentors in my career that made my career. I can truly say they are, 51% responsible for my success. I was responsible for showing up every day. I was responsible for grinding. I was responsible for my leadership, but they were really responsible for putting me in positions that at times I actually pinched myself and said, man, they have more faith in me than I have in
Yeah.
myself. So for me to reach that vision of 1 million people, I really needed to go broad, do
Yeah.
different things. And another thing that I've done is I've gone out to, I'm at 45 different colleges that I've gone out to and spoken with student athletes, talked about what does it mean to be a captain? What does it mean as a freshman to be a leader? Because freshman a leader, it might mean, showing up to practice and getting the balls.
Yep.
It's probably not going to be given the halftime chat. Um,
Yeah.
what is it like to be a senior who's not getting a lot of playing time, but to be a leader on that team? So
Yeah.
I kind of have melded that together, and I'm still focused. I'm 56. I'm healthy. I got a number of years left to go. But I am going to get to that million mark and hopefully
Yeah.
eclipse it and go beyond.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And do you think two questions come from what you just said. Have, where did the motivation come from at such an early age where you were different? You're like, I've got things to accomplish. I got to figure out how to accomplish it. I'm going to do this, this, and this. Did you have like the way you grew up family wise? Was there a teacher or coach? Like, who motivated you to be like that?
So it's interesting, because I've thought about that a number of times, because I have 3 siblings. My oldest sister, was born with Down syndrome, and she was my roommate up till freshman year of high school when I built
Uh,
up enough courage to sit my parents down and ask if I could have my own bedroom. And
yeah.
that, it was weird living in a bedroom with my sister in a trundle bed, and I was in bottom and had to roll it
Yeah.
in. And then I had 2 older brothers that were 9 years older, and we've all done different things in life. And I was out of the 4 of us, I just naturally the most motivated,
Yeah.
and the most motivated to climb. And I asked my brothers one time, I said, "Hey guys, we went to the same schools, we went to the same church, we did the same things. How did we become so different?" I mean, like, if the 3 of us were on this podcast right now and there were a chat room, people would be saying, "These guys aren't brothers." I mean, to the point that my brothers, when I was little, convinced me that I was adopted because they're like, "You're not us. You're not like
Yeah.
us," which is
Yeah.
totally what brothers 9 years older do to the younger one. And it was interesting. One of my brothers said to me, "Brendan, you've been that way since you've been born." And I go, "Oh, well, what answer is that?" And it was interesting. He told me his perspective that when I was born, I was actually born 2 months early, and I was born under 2 pounds. And I stayed in the hospital for a long time, and I was pronounced dead. My heart stopped, and I had 7 blood transfusions. I got baptized, confirmed, and anointing of the sick, and I made it.
Yeah.
So one of my brothers said, "You've been a fighter since the day you've been born. You don't know anything else." And you know what's interesting about that? Like, and I was probably like 28, 29, 30. It was right
Yep.
about the time when I got my first CEO role, when we had a little family event and we had a family reunion, and one brother said, "Hey, how did you do that?" And I didn't, and another brother answered the question. So I'm going to go with that answer. I'm going to go with the
Yeah.
answer one of my brothers gave me is, since a young age, I had to fight for my life, and
Yeah.
that just got ingrained in me as just like a fighter. And
Yeah.
a book that hopefully is on your site. It's not the most cerebral book you're ever going to read, but I liked it. Was Relentless by Julian Edelman.
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
and he talks about how his dad was relentless on him growing up,
Yeah.
coaching him and pushing him. And he tells stories of he had to field punts with one hand tied behind his back and all
Yeah.
these things. And he goes, and he credits his dad for kind of putting the chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he
That.
because he talks about he that it's been on his shoulder since he's been a young kid. And I remember reading that book, and I go, I think my brother's right. I think this fighter mentality, this, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna fight, I'm gonna figure a way, goes back to that birth.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and he was definitely he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He was intense. Every
Yeah.
Yeah, as a receiver, one of the most intense I've seen just from an attitude and aggressive and yeah, fighter is probably the best word to use for him. And
I,
another guy
I
I was thinking about too, just the way the way you came into this world. I don't know if there's any correlation, but Tim Tebow, similar story, premature and that guy
yeah.
just took off motivated and just I'm going to do whatever I set my mind to as well. So it's very interesting as you were saying that. I was like, man, there's other individuals I've heard this and they're the same way. They just they're motivated to go be the best they can be and to influence and have an impact, which is it's just
Well,
as you think about it, it's awesome, it's crazy.
Well, we hear some of these stories where someone might have a health scare later in their life and it changes
Hmm.
their direction. And, maybe they're too focused on work and they become focused on family. Maybe they're not as focused on being as good a person and they decide, I'm going to be a better person, because
Hmm.
they have some health scare. And, this is the conscious unconscious mind, because obviously at birth you're not conscious about it.
Hmm.
but you just wonder, does it get stick into you? Does it get permanently implanted in your subconscious
Yeah.
mind that says fight or flight, and
Yeah.
your answer is just genetically coded
Yeah.
from birth to fight.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just take that with you, and and again, you don't know where that comes from, but like you said, you were just that way, and maybe that was some of it. That's incredible. My other question that came from that, and it was actually because I saw a post earlier today from Jesse Itzler, and he was talking about networking, in a
Yep.
way where he spends a few minutes each day sending a text message, or a note or something, just to people, so that you kind of stay top of mind, and you're showing genuineness and care. But you were talking about your mentors, and how and in some of the cases they believed in you more than you believed in yourself to go do things. How important is networking and those relationships? How important have they been for you? And kind of talk about those opportunities to where you maybe been a little bit uncomfortable, but they kind of led you to those giant leaps that you've been able to do.
Yeah, so, I had 6 mentors, and the 6 that I talk about were all organic mentors. They weren't
Hmm.
like, I wasn't put in with them in a program.
Yeah.
By the way, I was put together in programs with them, and those aren't the ones for at least me that turned out to be the game-changing ones. The ones that happened organically
Yeah.
are, um, and my mentors just first of all served as role models of what I wanted to be like. I remember one of my role models, or one of my mentors, like he would walk in a room, and if he walked out, I guarantee you'd say, "Who was that?"
Yeah.
You just like he just had this way about him, and you knew he was important, but he didn't have to act important. He had this commanding presence, and like I took that from him. And by the way, as he mentored me, I asked him like, you can speak in a small room, in a big room, and big auditorium, and you're comfortable. He goes, well, I always wasn't. I have a presentation coach, and I said, you do? And he goes, yeah. His name is Nick Dally, by the way. And by the way, if anyone's out there looking for one, he's still doing programs. Nick Dally. And so, he put him in touch with me, and I've used Nick for 20 years. And so, but what he taught me is that was something that he consciously worked on,
Yeah.
how to have that presence, how to be the man without being the man, if you will. And because he wasn't arrogant, he just had this confidence, and you want to follow him. And I took that from him. Other mentors are funny. My very first mentor, I was in a meeting, and somehow we were just talking. It was a networking meeting, going back
Yeah.
to your networking, and somehow it came out that we had the same birth date. Right? I wish I knew how that conversation happened. He goes, "Hey, let's go golfing for our birthdays." And I'm like, "Great." Chris, I had never touched a club in my life, right? So I borrow clubs from somebody. I go meet him at his fancy country club in Vienna,
Yeah.
Virginia, and a Westwood Country Club, and we're on the range, and he looks over, and he goes, "You've never golfed before, have you?" And I'm like, Bill, no, no, I've never golfed." He goes, "This is great." But, like, the kindness that he had
Yeah.
to say, "Hey, I've got this young guy, he's never golfed, but he he still showed up,
Yeah.
and he taught me, like, how to golf." And that became a skill that was important in my career,
Yeah.
um, but what I learned from that is, like, and by the way, he invited me back to his club to golf, and when there were certain trips, he'd say, "Hey, are you gonna be on this trip?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Are you staying Saturday?" I'm like, "I've gotta stay Saturday." He goes, "Oh, let's go golf." And I'm like, "I can't believe this guy wants to golf with me." And he didn't really wanna golf with me, he wanted to invest his time
Yeah.
in me.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, you're in a golf cart for 4 hours, you get a lot of mentoring in those 4 hours. I
Yeah.
mean, in that I could tell you that type of mentoring is better than, across a table.
Yeah.
'Cause, you talk sports, you talk girlfriends, you talk professional, you talk family, you talk legacy, and, you probably just talk about a lotta guy stuff that,
Yeah.
just comes out on a golf course that doesn't come out, like, and by the way, nothing bad, just, like you talk about the Julian Edelmans
Yeah.
out while you're out.
Yeah. No, I love the genuine relationship aspect. And again, and I've told you I'm in the recruiting space and sales, and I was looking over my numbers a couple of years ago with my leadership, and we realized where 90% of my business had came from. It was actually from the gym, just guys
Yeah.
that I was working out with and hanging out with, and we had similar interest of being our best selves. We love sports, but it was just baffling to actually put that on paper. And we were like, wow, my top 5 accounts came from me meeting these individuals while working out, at a CrossFit gym. And one guy I golfed with as well. He kind of similar story. He made me buy clubs. I bought some cheap ones so I could go play with them, and then it
Yep.
led to business with his company. But just those genuine friendships that you build, and just having those guys that pour into you. I always find that fascinating too, because it just seems like y- people who are successful have been poured into from others, and they don't take that lightly, and the appreciation for that is really important. So I love hearing your experience with having those leaders pour into you, and just how important that was.
Well, going back to your networking and your gym, and I mentor a lot of young college grads, early
Hmm.
career people now, and I think a lot of them, and I talk to them, networking is LinkedIn, and I say that's a component of it. Like that's like the starter, but networking, is really, a physical practice. The law of physical presence. It's done in front of each other. Don't get me wrong, like Zoom's incredible, podcasts are incredible, but like, getting together, and I've really pushed them, and I think this is a small challenge, maybe because of COVID, maybe the way the young generation's been raised,
Hmm.
is they haven't, I genuinely believe, had as much human interaction
Hmm.
as a generation before them, or and
Yeah.
then 2 generations before them. So, like today, you mentioned gym. I'm at the gym. I'm on the treadmill. I do my treadmill. I get off the treadmill. Some guy goes, "Man, you're fit." I go, "Yeah. If we had my fitness level and your muscles, would have the perfect 50-year-old." Right? Because this guy's just lifting and he's got guns, he's crushing it, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh god, now I'm so out of shape." I go, "Okay, my fitness, your muscles will meld together." And then he's like, "Hey, I'm Chris, I'm Brendan." He owns a business, and he says, "Oh, we ought to get a drink sometime. I'm meeting him later tonight." No,
Yeah.
I have no idea what the guy does.
Yeah.
What I do know based on where he was working out, he's been successful.
Yeah.
So, but like that connection, just him saying, "Hey, you're fit," me joking around with muscle. So there's that human interaction. Now don't
Yep.
get me wrong, LinkedIn is like the best tool that's ever happened to networking, but if you overuse the tool, meaning you think that's 90% of your network, then I think you're gonna miss that. You still got to go to conferences. You still got to get in physical.
Yeah.
If you've built network, like for instance, I in my email distribution list in my contacts, I have people in every city. So if I go to New York, I have, if I meet somebody in New York, I just stick them in there, and I'll just send a note out. Hey, I'll be in New York next week. I'll be in DC. I'll be in
Yeah.
Dallas. If anyone wants to get together. And sometimes it's really depressing, like, nobody's available, one person's available. I've done other times when I've had 10 people show up at a happy hour.
Yeah.
Um, but what I will tell you is even the people that don't show up, I get an email back. "Hey, thank you so much for letting me know you're in town. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you staying in touch."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the last thing I'll say, Chris, I'm being a little long-winded here, is here's a warning on networking. And we all know what I'm gonna say. You haven't talked to somebody for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, and all of a sudden you need them as a reference. All of a sudden you need to network with them, and you get the text, from Chris saying, "Hey, how you doing?" And you're like, "Good." And the next text is, "Hey, will you be a reference for me?" And but I'm not gonna tell you that's wrong, but I'm not gonna tell you that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Just
Yeah.
just take some intermittent time, and, I talk to people about, make a list of 100 people that are the most important people in your life, and what you will find when you make that list is you are not balancing your time into those 100 people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honestly, I guarantee you half of them you probably take for granted that they're always gonna be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, they will. But why not wish them a happy 4th of July, a happy
Yeah.
Memorial Day, a happy Labor Day? And there's apps that can help you with that too, by the way.
Yeah. No, and I work with some people on this too, and you got to put in effort, and it doesn't take much, but yeah, just checking in with someone, it means so much more than you realize. And I'm blessed to have friends that do it with me. They send me random texts, Happy Fourth of July, Merry Christmas. I'm like, you didn't have to do that, but you did, so I'm thinking
Yep.
about you, and I'll probably text you here in a couple weeks because I'm thinking about you for a different reason. And it's just that
Yeah.
genuine taking some time to follow up with people. And yeah, I was laughing again back to Jesse yesterday. He was talking about a Coach K basketball camp that he attended, and he just texts Coach K like, "Hey, that was awesome, appreciate it." He's like, "Coach K probably won't remember who I am, but if I ever meet him again, I'll be able to say, hey, yeah, that was me,' follow up and whatnot." And you just kind of organically build that, and so yeah, I'm a big fan of that. So I want people to hear that. Just put in the work and do that. Just how important, and it just takes one connection and one opportunity from someone. Um, that can change your life really, with opportunities and just things you can accomplish that way. So again, just wanted you to break that down because I find that really interesting, and you're
Well,
preaching what I believe as well.
well,
And
I'll
so
give you one last piece of advice. So I get asked in a lot of my mentor meetings, Brendan, hey, you do a good job of this. How much time do you spend a day on this? And my answer surprises them, and then they understand where it is. And I say, I don't spend any time. And they go,
yeah,
well, that's impossible. I go, if I'm sitting on the subway and there's 5 minutes, I'm not doom scrolling Instagram.
yeah,
I'm thinking, hey Chris, I know you're a Pats fan. Congrats on being 4-2 and on top of the AFC East again. To a Yankees fan, I can't believe Toronto slipped by you. I'm a Red Sox fan. I was rooting for you.
yeah,
And 10, 5. So they say, how much time do you put in? And I go, I don't, but you have minutes and minutes and minutes throughout your day that are idle time. And
yeah,
remember what I said on the front end, I'm an efficiency and productivity hawk. I don't want to sit on the subway for 5 minutes or sit in a cab for 5 minutes or just like go through and see that 5 parts of the world are on fire.
yeah,
I'll send 5 short texts out.
yeah,
I'll read something meaningful. So I say that in that, but if you get in that habit of it's just a good habit, great book, Atomic Habits. But if you just get in good habits of being efficient with your time, being productive
yeah,
of your time. Now, if I had to say how many minutes a day do I do that? I bet you it's 10 or 15 minutes.
yeah,
But if you say how many minutes do I block on my calendar or take away from other activities, I'd say zero.
yeah,
Absolutely zero.
yeah. Yeah, well, people just got yeah, change your Instagram time for some of those meaningful texts. There'd be a lot accomplished, I bet,
Yeah.
for a lot of people. So, no, it's a good point. Um, Brendan, just one more question for you, because
Yeah.
again, we're going to be efficient on time here. And by the way, too, I this podcast will come out after it, but I will be at the Titans Patriots game this Sunday, so I'll look forward to. I'll send you a picture and let you know I'm there. We'll see what happens, but I'm excited
Which
to
team will
see
you
you.
be rooting for?
Well, we're Titan season ticket holders, so but we'll be happy to see Rabel back, and I know that'll a lot of Titan fans are probably wishing we never let him go, but I'll
Yeah.
be there, and
All
I'm
right.
sure
Well,
there'll be a lot of
I
Patriots
wish
fans.
you well, just not too well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm sure there's not a lot to worry about, I don't think, as a Patriots fan for that game. But no, I'll send you a picture. But no, Brendan, obviously, I ask everyone who comes on the podcast just for Books for Guys, and again, can't wait. Every book you put out, I can't wait to spotlight it and share it with others. But what's a book or a couple of books that have had a big impact on you personally, and
Yeah.
books that when asked that you recommend to others?
So you'll get a kick out of this. So, my daughters graduated college. My son is a sophomore, and their roommates get a book from me every month. Now I don't ask them if they read them all.
Yeah,
But so I'll just last month's book. It was September. So last month's book was Atomic Habits. And I just
nice.
thought, for sophomores in college, just like building habits.
Yeah.
This month's book is The Tipping Point. Just,
Malcolm Gladwell.
on, understanding. Next month's book is God Winks, when God
Yeah,
winks at you. So, I try not to have them be like all one genre.
Yeah.
Julian Edelman, they'll get the Relentless book, and I'll tell them, "Hey, easiest book to read." And so those are some, another one that I like to give. And a lot of those kids are business majors. Is A Random Walk Down Wall Street, which basically says you take professionals, you take a dartboard, and you're going to get about the same results.
Yeah.
In your stock portfolio. So I'd say that those are some of my favorites. That I kind of purchase and give out to people.
Yeah.
And one thing that's great about books is there's just so many good ones.
Yeah.
You know, so and it's something I'm not sure how I got started doing this. But I've always given books away as gifts.
Yeah.
Like the last 4 years, every year, I to about 200 people, I send them a holiday gift. 3 of the last 4 years have been a book.
Love that.
And one year was a battery charger. But,
Quite different.
3 of the 4 years was a book, and this year is a book that I haven't read yet, but I guarantee it's gonna be a good book. It's coming out in November. Zach Brown, who didn't graduate high school officially, who was on Wheel of Fortune as a kid and got his first go-kart, who's now the McLaren CEO, wrote a book, 7/10 of a second, and it's coming out in
Wow.
November. So kind of a self-made guy.
Yeah.
And I just think that somebody who's had that level of success and is self-made, there's probably a lot of good humility lessons in that. So
Yep.
that's a book I plan on giving out in the near future.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a good one. I'm gonna add that to my list, as well as Julian Edelman's. I haven't read his book. Um, Maybe I can get him on the podcast too. That'd be awesome. I'm gonna work on that.
He's a great podcaster just because
Yeah.
he's such a good
No,
personality.
he's probably one of those like top 5 guys I would love to have dinner with or a beer with and just like spend a day with him. I'm sure it would be a blast. So he's definitely
I
a book
Just being
already.
in New England, I've seen him. I've been around him a few times. Both every time he's been super nice.
Yeah.
He's kind of as advertised. He's funny.
Yeah.
Just a good guy.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna read it, and I'm sure I'll definitely love that one. But Brennan, man, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I think again what you're doing and accomplishing. I just want young guys to see that and see how important books are. And you've written books, and hopefully, I can encourage some guys to pick up and read them. And as you put more out there, like I said, I can't wait to spotlight them and have more conversations with you. But man, thank you so much for the support, Brendan, and we appreciate it.
All right, Chris. I appreciate what you're doing, and I've got your link out to just about every student athlete in college I know out there. So thanks for doing what you do.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brendan.